Good morning, students. Today's lesson is on Spirit of Sacrifice. The title of the story is David the Africa Explorer. If your family had little money and you were employed, what would you do with your first salary? Would you buy a Latin grammar book? Learning to sacrifice less important things helped David to become a great man. David was born in Scotland. His parents loved God and taught their children to also do the same. At the age of 9, David recited by heart Psalm 119, the longest psalm, for which he received the most notable gift in his life, a copy of the New Testament. His family did not have many resources. Therefore, his mother managed the little that they had so that the children would not lack anything. At the age of 10, David started to work at a textile mill to help at home. With a portion of his first paycheck, he purchased a Latin grammar book. Note, David was just 10 years old, but he started his work at 6 o'clock in the morning. He would rest only for breakfast and lunch. Then he would continue working until 8 o'clock at night. While the machine was spinning the cotton, he kept his grammar book open and studied it line by line. When he finished his work, he ran to night school. After school, which ended at late hours, he studied the lessons for the next day. On holidays, David liked to fish and take long walks through the fields and riverbanks. He enjoyed observing in nature the things he had studied in botany and geology books. Since childhood, he had heard talk about a brave missionary named Charles Guzlaf, and he also wanted to be a missionary after reaching adolescence. After several years of not doing much while sacrificing himself to help his family, David left the textile mill and his home to continue his studies. His dream of becoming a missionary came true. For that, he studied Greek, medicine, and theology. In 1841, at the age of 28, he returned home, said farewell to his parents and siblings, and went to Africa. During the trip, he learned to use the sextant and to locate the position of the ship by observing the moon and stars, skills that would be very useful in Africa. In Africa, during his exhausting and dangerous trips, he learned the language and customs of its people and made maps of rivers and mountains. Around bonfires, he listened to stories about its people. His big dream soon turned into reality. David Livingstone became the greatest explorer of Africa. In total, he spent 15 adventurous years on African soil. He covered thousands of kilometers, crossed the Kalahari Desert twice, navigated through the Zambezi River from Angola to Mozambique, searched for the springs of the Nile River, discovered Victoria Falls, and was the first European to cross Lake Tanganyika. He also crossed Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya. His objective was to free Africa from its regime of slavery and to take Christianity and civilization to the interior of the African continent. In villages, he treated the sick and won the friendship of the natives. He also conducted much research, discovering various edible roots and species of fruits that were produced in the desert without being cultivated. Although he fulfilled his great dream, David Livingstone also led a life of renunciation and self-sacrifice. He traveled by foot, in a carriage, and on a canoe through unknown and hostile areas. He also had to face water shortage and suffocating heat in the desert. One time, David was attacked by a lion, which grabbed him by the shoulders and both fell to the ground. The lion roared and dangerously shook him. David survived the attack, but his shoulder never fully recovered. So many difficult moments. Some tribes perceived him as a slave trader. On a given trip, he was abandoned by African guides who fled with the medicine and food, and was afflicted by malaria on several occasions. Yet, the most difficult moment he coped with in Africa was the death of his wife. a victim of disease. David Livingstone became famous as a discoverer and explorer. He was the first to discover the geography, social structure, animals, and plants from the African continent. He published the bestseller Missionary Travels and Researches in South Africa and worked for the British government. However, Livingstone's greatest satisfaction included the simple fact of staying in Africa, where he spent the last days of his life while even falling ill. Livingstone died while praying. The natives found him kneeling at the side of the bed in the village of Chief Chitambo. His trusted assistants buried his heart under a tree, where in 1902 Livingstone's actual monument was erected. Presently, his body's remains are interred at Westminster Abbey in London, England.
That's it for today, students. Hope you understood the story and learned its moral. God bless. Have a great day.